Well, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me again. The topic of this particular video was inspired, shall we say, by Richard Dolan, who has a channel. He has a new name for it. It's called Van Dolan. And he hit upon a few points in the video that I agreed with. And it was a video talking about, in particular, Paul McCartney. And some people, whether they're fans of Paul's, whether they're Beatles fans, whether they're casual fans, who kind of dismiss Paul's career after a certain point. Now, everyone's entitled to do that. Lord knows I do that with certain artists and certain people. But I think Richard hit upon a point that made a lot of sense, and I want to say the same thing. I believe that for someone to have an opinion like that, of course, it should be an informed opinion. Case in point, there are a couple of people that I know of, well, maybe 3 or 4 that I can think of, who usually will say, well, I like Paul McCartney up to, say, Band on the Run, and then after that, he didn't do anything any good. Or someone may say, well, I listened to Tug of War in 1982, and I really liked that album, but then he released Say, Say, Say the next year, and I didn't like Say, 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 so after that, it's never been the same for me with Paul, and I've never really liked really anything or got the same magic from him or stuff like that he'd had before that. And that's fine if you've listened to every single album that he's done since then, and it's fine if you have a point of reference. But I think a lot of times what seems to happen is that people just, for lack of a better way to put it, they just write somebody off just instinctively and just period. It's like, well, I didn't really like this song. I didn't like this album. So after that, I stopped listening, and nothing was any good anymore. Well, you have to really listen to everything before you can make an informed opinion on that. I think if you're just writing it off, and I'm not just talking about Paul McCartney, I'm talking about any artist. And again, to be fair here, I probably do that, but I'm trying to think like a good example. Can't come up with one, but I'm trying to be fair and say, I guess I do it, but can't really come up with an example. I mean, I'm trying to give a little bit of ropey, a little bit of kind of coming together, because I probably do stick to my guns and my point myself, really. I'm not going to say that everything that Steve Miller will do. Talk about the Steve Miller Band. I mean, I like the Steve Miller Band when we talk about albums like The Joker and Fly Like an Eagle and Book of Dreams. I like that period. And a lot of people talk about early Steve Miller before then. And I'm not going to go out and say, well, I didn't like Steve Miller before that. I only liked Steve Miller when we got to 1973. That's when I liked Steve Miller. How the hell would I know? I didn't listen to everything that he did before that. I'll use another example that popped into my mind here just now. Fleetwood Mac, I used to always say, well, Fleetwood Mac really was good when we had the self-titled Fleetwood Mac album in 75 or 6, I think it was. One of those years before Rumors. And when we got Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, that's when I really liked Fleetwood Mac. The earlier Fleetwood Mac, I would say, they weren't as good. Well, how would I know? I'm not really listening religiously to every single one, really every album. And I got to say, I actually went back and listened to some Peter Green Fleetwood Mac in the early days, and I wound up liking it. So it shows you never really know for sure. It was pretty good. It was interesting. So there was life before Buckingham Nicks. That's my point of that. So I'm wondering what everybody thinks out there about this. I think Richard made a good point. He basically said, and I'm paraphrasing him, it's not word for word, but if you've listened to everything, fine, then your opinion's valid. But if you haven't, you're just making a general statement like that without really listening to everything, then you don't really have the, I don't know what word he used, validation in making such a sweeping generalization. And I do find, I got to agree with Richard, I do find that happens mostly with Paul McCartney solo than anything else. There are so many good albums, so many songs worthy of the Beatles, so many solo songs by Paul worthy of the best early Paul stuff that he did later on, that if you listen to it with an open mind, I think you'll find that it didn't stop at Band on the Run, and it didn't stop at Tug of War. Some people go a little farther up and say, well, I liked up to Flaming Pie, then after that I didn't, stuff. So there you go. And if you're a person who says, well, I actually have listened to everything that Paul did, it's not that I skipped albums. I listened to everything. I gave it a fair shot, everything, and I don't like everything. Well, that's fair. But I think there's also maybe some kind of like stigma in there, some kind of like wall built up mentally or on principle or something. On principle, I didn't like anything else that he did. I have that feeling at such and such a time is when it really ended, and therefore you kind of have a resistance to anything. Controversial topic, perhaps, but what do you think?